Ed, you had brought up this notion, this quote at the beginning about ethics and emotion.
Hmm.
And I think this is connected right here. I think it's very connected. So if people can speak to the emotional impact of what is going on, it might help to open up people's hearts again, remind them of how can we come together in critical thinking to do this. So you kindly sent me images of charts that I'd like you to review because I think this is really important. You've already given a summary of these, um,
Sure.
but I would love for you to review these. And also, I want to say that one of your gifts and why your voice is being called upon now is because you have trained yourself and you have this gift innately, it seems, to see patterns in the system and to see this fraud over time. Most of us don't have either the time or that capacity as a gift. So this is a huge gift that you're bringing into the world to see this pattern. Like some people see it in bodies, we have a holistic body. If we get hurt somehow, if we have cancer, let's say, it's not just one little piece that gets extracted, but it's from the whole system's point of view that we can heal, right? I believe invariably that this is what's going on in our world systemically. You affect one thing, you were saying the reason perhaps for the distraction of the pandemic is because the financial system is collapsing because of fraud. So where do we attack it? We don't cut off an arm. We have to get to the whole head of it. We have to address the whole system, and you are doing it through your discernment of patterns of fraud. So with that, if you can show us these things, and I will put a screen share and pop these charts up.
Okay, this is a great chart. So a little background. When I started my journey in February and started to get my 15 minutes of fame, in one of my first interviews on the Steve Bannon's War Room, I said I was going to look at insurance company results. And an ex-Wall Street insurance analyst who used to, he was #1 institutional investor ranked. He worked for a Wall Street bank and he wrote research covering life insurance companies. He was there for 7 years. He reached out to me and we started to team up and we looked at all the financial results from the insurance industry in the fourth quarter and we found alarming things. Roll forward about a month after that, he was mucking around in the CDC data, the all-cause mortality data, which is a government database online. Now they lumped it all together as all ages, and that told a disturbing story, but not the whole story. In that story, excess mortality went up into the end of 2020, and then again almost to a new high in the fall and winter of 2021, but not quite. He was able to take the data and break it down by age cohort, and he has actuarial training. So he took the baseline data. You derive excess data from a baseline. So the baseline data was between the years of 2016 and 2019. So these deaths I'm referring to are excess above what we saw between 16 and 19. And what we saw when we broke it down by age cohort was what we call the smoking gun. Ages 25 to 44 is the chart you see before you. Generally speaking, you can call those millennials, roughly. And you can see that we had a spike in the end of 2020, and then vaccines started to get rolled out. They spiked a little bit, and then into the mandate season of last year, when Biden on September 9th declared the corporate mandates, and corporations were already starting to mandate. We saw an alarming, what we call rate of change spike in excess mortality in this age cohort, 25 to 44. into the fall, August, September, October, when everybody had to decide between keeping their job or not taking the vax.
And many of my clients were experiencing that very thing. They would say, what do I do? What do I do here? And sharing data was very important at the time. Go ahead.
Yeah, so you can see that spike is just not, I mean, if you use deductive reasoning and logic, what changed? Vaccination. So let's reverse the logic. In year 2 of a pandemic with let's assume the vaccine was a miracle vaccine. If it was a miracle, shouldn't that be going towards 0 in year 2 of a pandemic that is forcing everybody? Yes, it should. So but you turn that logic on its head, and that's what I just said. You see a spike up. Again, the only thing that's changed here for this age cohort is a massive vaccination program that occurred for the whole country, and you can see it in the numbers. Between March of 2021 and February of 2022, when we did this analysis, that was 61,000 excess millennial deaths. 61,000. To put some meat on those bones, that's a Vietnam War that occurred for the millennials in 1 year. The Vietnam War killed 58,000 over 10 years. That's how many troops we lost. I think part of the reason why we've seen COVID kind of disappear, the Biden administration declared the pandemic over, is because, unfortunately, the evidence of the crime started showing up, and that's the bodies and the disability. And so they kind of had to put it on pause. So Pfizer's dreams of quarterly boosters forever doesn't seem to be taking hold, but they're not going to admit to this crime, and they're still mandating it for kids so they can get legal liability on a go-forward basis. Because once you get it on the child's vaccination schedule, you don't get it. You're not held liable, and that's why they decided to harm babies for themselves. So I mean, that's the only thing I can they're doing it to cover their butt.
Yes, and because of your diligence, and we'll get to the rationale for you to bring this out now, but to your credit of due diligence around what's going on, I'm going to flip to the next chart, this one about the disabilities. This is really important because this, more than anything, from what I am looking at with data, and I've been researching this since 2020 for all sorts of reasons, not the least of which is helping people to lead their lives in a way that's healthiest, when the intention was anything else but health for any of this coming into the forefront. And disabilities is a unfortunate, horrible, certainly a criminal act against our population. So go ahead and speak to this chart if you would.
Right. So this is straight from the government's website. It's the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's the disability survey. And I don't have the longer term chart, but you can see prior to the vaccinations, it was running around, between, somewhere around 29 million. And for 5 years prior to that, it had the trend had been up prior to 5 years ago, or the prior 5 years, but it leveled off here. And then we saw the spike down. We can't explain that spike down into the vaccination. We think there was some disruption in the household survey and some things going on in 2020. But ever since the vaccines were introduced, you can see it just took off in February of 2021 and hasn't stopped. And the trend is continuing up. And the trend, and again, rate of change is important. What is rate of change? That's the slope of the line. You can see the slope of that increase is very steep. So that's the rate of change, which is indicative that a trend has started and it's strong. Okay, let me say that again. When we have a rate of change like this, if this was a stock chart, and I could figure out a couple reasons why that trend was occurring. I would buy that stock and do more research, okay? And then as my thesis would get proven, I'd buy more and more. So this is what I would do for a living. I would buy that trend. So that trend I see there, I would buy disability as a stock. And I don't mean that to sound, cruel. I'm saying that because of my training, that's a trend. And that's a trend that's not going to stop anytime soon unless the vaccination program stops.
So
That's my opinion.
So in a sense, you're saying because you are trained in pattern recognition, you're seeing this as an indicator of a good a forecast that you can
Yes.
stick your mark on and say,
Right. If I wanted to go long death and disability and that was a security, I'd be long those two and make a lot of money. I'm just saying that to prove that this is what my training trained me to do, to make money for my clients. Well, I'm trying to help humanity. And this trend that I see, it started with the vaccinations. It's up 10% in 1 year, 10%. That's 3 million additional Americans are now identifying voluntarily as disabled. Now, I believe this number is probably low. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think we actually, I didn't give you these two charts. We broke it down by data, by gender, I mean, and women are up 30% in 1 year. So, and now we think that has something to do with the fact that men don't like to admit things, but the women seem to be disproportionately more disabled than men at the moment. And this has huge ramifications for our society. Like you and I alluded to earlier, a death is a tragic thing, but a death is a death, and life goes on. When someone's disabled and they can't care for themselves or work, your life changes. And you have to, the people that are taking care of the disabled have to take time off from work if they can't afford to put them somewhere. The disabled, are just effectively taken out of society. They're put in, if they're lucky enough to get a disability claim, then that's a financial burden on the system. Mm-hmm. And that also takes a laborer out of the workforce, causing inflation because there's less people around to take jobs. Mm-hmm. So this is part of the inflation problem. It's the deaths and the disability are causing a labor shortage. It's not what the narrative they're trying to present is, they call it the Great Resignation. I don't know what that means. It's just a catchword that people decided that they want to not work. I mean, most people need to work to survive. So this is not the Great Resignation. This is death and disability. That's causing the worker undersupply issue that many of your CEO and senior VP clients who don't have the background that I do, they don't see it yet, but hopefully they watch this video and they figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. And so with this as a predictor for, forecasting that disabilities are on the rise, and this is not a good thing. This is not the sign of a healthy economy, nor the sign of a healthy societal trend. How would you, or what would you do recommendation-wise for people in the world, both at a common everyday level and those who are in the system that is creating this issue?
You mean from a health perspective or a call to action?
Call to action.
So the call to action is this. If you're in the system and you were unaware of this, you're probably what we call compartmentalized. You don't know that you were part of something that was doing this. If you have access to data that could blow the whistle on this, become a whistleblower. And we need chain of custody on the data. That's number one. Number two, if you're not in the system that's perpetuating this, you need to alert others through the educational process, and also talking about the fear. Like, look, I know you were in fear and you thought this is the right thing to do, but the solution to your fear is actually harming you more than it's going to remove. It has more dire consequences on your health than the actual fear you had of the virus. And I think that's the way you need to come at it. The virus, come at it with simple facts. The virus survivability rate is 99.7%. The vaccine far outweighs any benefits of protecting you. Well, first of all, even if you get the virus, it's just not that harmful. The vaccine is likely an order of magnitude more harmful to you than getting COVID. It just is.
Yeah.
And that's being borne out in the numbers. And the other thing I would like to say is if you have loved ones that are on board with this program and they're in the COVIDian religion, you just have to continue to press on them not to get boosters and point out obvious facts like, why would you get a booster for something that doesn't work? That's the definition of insanity. And then they'll say back to you, well, if I get COVID, it could, at least it won't be as bad as it could be. And then you ask them, what study do you have to show that? Because as far as I know, there's no studies that indicate that the vaccines do anything like that. And there are no studies. I've looked. It's a tagline. It's a tagline like I heard in the pharmaceutical SSRI industry, you have a chemical imbalance. That's never been proven. Again, these are marketing things. Mm-hmm. These are marketing sales tactics. And unless you can show me a study that proves that it makes your symptoms and your chance of hospitalization lower, I don't believe it. I just don't believe it.